What's going on, guys? Welcome to the LowKick MMA Weekly Roundup. I'm your host, Ryan Galloway, joined by Jordan Ellis. We're here to recap all the action from UFC Fight Night, Rozenstruik versus Gane, and cover some news. First we'll get onto the card. What did you think overall of the event, Jordan?
Most weeks we're fans, when we come on here and we big the UFC up and the great job they're doing and have done throughout all this pandemic. But this week's just not one of them weeks where you can do it. This was a week card to start with. It was starting quite late, which is which is also not good. When it's not really a great fight. It clashed with Canelo, which weren't great either. And then it was down to 9 fights. So we had 9 fights and they didn't even deliver. There was one fight that really stood out, and then besides that, everything else was dull or it just didn't deliver. And it was just one of them nights, and it's one of them rare nights where there's not much good to talk about, and it were a great event, and the main event really didn't deliver. So we'll get into that one now.
Yeah, we'll jump into the main event first, and obviously Ciryl Gane came away with victory. Not what everyone expected, not a climactic main event for sure. Gane did what he needed to win, and I don't really put any blame on him in this fight because he was trying to engage in the fight. He was trying to be in there, and he was in there, which is why he won. Rozenstruik just looked frozen. He wasn't willing to put himself out there. When he would throw, he'd miss, and it just wasn't the best performance on his behalf. And in turn, the fight wasn't great.
No, and it does happen sometimes at heavyweight, where it's such high stakes, and someone like Rozenstruik, who's not long ago just being absolutely starched by Ngannou, maybe just thinking, I've got another monster in front of me. Like, Gane looks like the French Anthony Joshua. He's an absolute beast, and he's standing there in front of him. And I think just on the night, he didn't fancy it. I want to give Gane some props, just because obviously in his last 2 fights I've picked against him, I think he's getting pushed quite quickly. I think he's in big positions, and he's just gone to 8-0, which is he's basically top 5 in the UFC now, it's crazy really. And but he shows some maturity, to not rush in and not to be able to do that for 5 rounds. It was boring, no one really enjoyed it, but to show that level of maturity in the cage at 7-0, 8-0, it's really impressive. But for fans, it's not enjoyable. I don't think he's won new fans. In his next fight, I'll probably pick against him again because he hasn't shown me anything where I can jump on this hype train. I'm seeing the hype train. I'm seeing everyone jumping on it. But for me, I don't think kicking Rozenstruik's knee for 5 rounds and landing the odd shot is enough. And I think I'm looking for someone to actually test him and push him and do something. I thought Rozenstruik would do that, and he just didn't. So for me, this fight was more about what Rozenstruik didn't do rather than what Gane did well. And I think that's fair today. I'm not giving him any stick. I'm just still waiting to jump on that hype train. Me, I can jump on a hype train after one fight if they're good enough. But I'm not seeing nothing from Gane now. Yeah, what do you think?
Well, when the fight started, probably the first 2 rounds, every single time Gane would engage and he'd come forward, I was like on the edge of my seat. I was like, Rozenstruik's going to land something huge, But after round 2, it was kind of like, all right, I can't see this happening. And except for the last round, that was when I was like, maybe you can pull something out of the hat in the last round, but obviously wasn't the case. As far as like Gane's technique and how he looked, I thought he looked fantastic. He looked flawless, but obviously he was flawless because his opponent didn't show up, like you said. But this is the thing about athletes like Gane. I think we'll find the same with Jones when he comes up. If you don't have that one shot, massive end your night power in all your shots, fights are going to end up like this. They're going to end up with you picking apart your opponent because there's so many heavy hitters in that division. Or the one key takeaway I had from this is I thought Gane's wrestling was a lot better than it actually is. Because when he got that submission, that heel hook in one of his earlier fights, I gave him a lot of credit and thought his grappling was up here. He's a good grappler, don't get me wrong. He's very talented, but yeah, I oversold how I thought his wrestling was because he shot 11 attempts, I think, and I think he got 1 of them. So, if he goes up against someone like Jones, who's been wrestling for years and years and years, it'll be night and day comparison there. But that was something I thought when I watched this. Jones is going to have the same problem that Gane had in this fight. He's not going to be able to knock these... Oh, maybe he can. Maybe he'll shock me. But I doubt he'll be able to knock these guys out with one shot. So the guys that can knock him out with one shot are going to end up with fights like this, where it's anticlimactic with him just picking them apart for 5 rounds. But I really hope that's not the case,
I think what we can expect Jones to do is to close the gap and not stand at that kickboxing range. I think he'll be closing the gap and throwing a lot of elbows and doing a lot of clinch and wrestling work. And I think that's what Gane should have really done. If you're a bit worried about Rozenstruik trying to counter you, because he was trying, especially early, he was throwing wildly early, weren't he? So close the gap and take that away and land an elbow. He finished JDS with an elbow, didn't he? It might be behind there, but it was a good elbow, and he did that. So I don't want to be too critical. I'm just not there with Gane yet. I just want to see more, and I think what Dana said at the fight, Dana gets a lot of stick when he comes out and he criticizes fighters, but what he said was right. He won. It was the biggest win in his career. It was in a main event. But has he won any new fans? Has anyone watched that fight and said, I can't wait to watch Gane again? Because when we were speaking about this last week, I was speaking about if Gane wins this, then he can fight Ngannou in France, and it's a huge fight. And and I was saying this and I was bigging it up, but do you want to do that now? Is Gane there? Yeah, I don't think he is. I think Gane, although he's about to crack the top 5, I think he should be fighting the guys who we were speaking about last week. The Tom Aspinalls, the Chris Daukases, the Spivaks. I don't think he should go straight to the top, and I don't think the UFC will want to rush him, because after this, if they put him in another main event, can they trust him to actually have a proper fight? I know it takes 2 to tango, but at some point when your opponent's given nothing, I'm sure a bit of pressure, and you might have folded there, Rozenstruik. So, I'm hoping they slow him down. He is just an 8-0, but he's in a weird position now because he's probably ranked 4th at heavyweight, which is crazy to see. But interested to see what happens next.
I tend to disagree with you there. I think that the competition that he's in amongst now is where he should be. Just because skill-wise, I think he looks like he belongs there. Well, I guess we'll see. But you can match him with Volkov or Derek Lewis. The Ngannou fight would have been perfect had he gone out there and put on a performance against Rozenstruik. But just getting a win, you're not going to send him someone below him. You're going to put him against one of the guys above him. And Volkov and Derek Lewis both had good performances recently. So either of those guys seem to be a good fight for Gane. And hopefully, I know Volkov would, but I hope if he gets Derek Lewis, that's another fight where we can actually see him tested. And I hope that fight's not like this one where it was a bit of a gun shy in the heavy hitter. You know what I mean? So we'll see.
In an ideal world, I'd rather see Volkov and Lewis rematch. I think that's a really cool rematch to make. I think they both are deserving of, I think whoever won that fight would be, they'd be on to big things after that. So,
yeah.
I'm not saying slow Gane down because of his lack of ability. I'm just saying he's 8-0, and I've always found this rush of him a bit strange. That it's on that Jimmie level where they just seem to be pushing him very, very quickly, and maybe because France has just made MMA legal and they want a big star and things like this. Ngannou, he's done a lot of work in France, but he's not actually from France, is he? He's from Cameroon or something like that. So, interested to see what they do next to them. I prefer him to slow down, but I just don't see how you do that now, because he's beat Rozenstruik, and Rozenstruik, despite that performance, he's got some good wins on his record. He has looked good in moments in the UFC. So, And props to Rozenstruik for after the fight coming out and saying, yeah, this was my worst performance. I'm sorry, just owning it. I prefer to see that than someone making excuses, and it was good to see, and I hope he comes back better than ever next time.
Let's hope so. We'll jump onto the co-main then, and we had the light heavyweights Nikita Krilov and Magomed Ankalaev. This is a fight that was advertised as there's going to be a finish. I know when we spoke about it, we thought there likely would be a finish, or we thought there'd be a big stark difference in the technique, especially with Ankalaev. I did not expect Ankalaev to be pushing the wrestling pressure in this one. But yeah, in the first round, Krilov managed to take that one, so Ankalaev decided to use his wrestling and dominate the second two, which is good for him to show the versatility of his game and show he's capable of doing that, especially with his one loss being that submission to Paul Craig. But yeah, not the most entertaining fight, that's for sure.
No, not at all. And I picked Ankalaev, and I'm still high on Ankalaev. Krilov's just one of them guys. I think you put him in with anyone in the top 10 and they'll probably struggle to look good against him. He's just, he's seen what he did to Johnny Walker. He shut it down and he just wrestled him to death. And I think Ankalaev was just one of them fights where you've just got to get the win. Get the win how you can. Get by Krilov, and bigger things are there. And I really like Ankalaev, and I was saying this last time, 28. It just that one loss, and he's winning that fight up until the final second. And just I am kind of on board with this type of shit. I think he can be a champion. And there's good fights for him at at the weight. So like, I want to see him progress. I want to see him moving. And Krilov will be back, and he'll be back beating people and annoying people and staying in them top 10 rankings. But yeah, but it weren't a great fight. It weren't, and we can say this about most of the fights on this card.
Yeah, we'll jump onto the one before, which was very similar. Although this one had a little bit of a controversy, I guess. And that was the women flyweight fight between Montana De La Rosa and Mayra Bueno Silva. And in the first round, obviously Silva grabbed the cage and stopped the takedown and lost a point. But if she hadn't lost that point, this would have been a flawless victory for her because she looked sensational throughout this fight. At the end of the fight, she was cutting her up with elbows and knees. Dominant performance. Just sucks that she lost that point early on and then in turn ended up with a draw. So she didn't get a loss, but she did get a draw. So,
Yeah, and it was the right thing to do because she won round one on the card. She would have won it if she didn't get that point taken. But would she have won it if De La Rosa got that takedown? De La Rosa might have secured that takedown and things like that. So you've got to take a point when I understand that when you're falling down, it's instinct to grab something and try and put yourself up, but it was grabbing it and then holding it for a second or two. So I think the referee did the right thing. I think it was right for her to lose a point. It was a competitive fight. It was a good fight. I thought Silva won, obviously, besides that, but a draw was a fair result in the end. And yeah, I just didn't like the fact that at the end, Silva grabbed De La Rosa and was kind of going over to Dana White, seemingly saying, "Oh, we want the bonus for Fight Night." Yeah. I was like, it went the best fight, or they wanted something from them. So Silva looked good though. She did look good, and besides that fence grab, she would have won. But yeah, in the end, if you cheat, and that's what it is. It is cheating. I don't want to. It's obviously it's not the worst type of cheating, but she stopped the takedown. De La Rosa's good on the ground. She might have held her down. Fair result draw.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you there. Before that, probably the best fight of the night by far, not even close, and that was Pedro Munhoz against Jimmie Rivera. What a war that was. Just like their first fight, this one delivered, and Pedro Munhoz looked fantastic, but Jimmie Rivera is one of the most durable fighters I've seen with those calf kicks because he just wore it for 3 rounds and managed to go to the decision.
Yeah, it was such a great fight, and it was the savior of the card, really, because they stole it. Honestly, they should have just given them all the bonus money because I know they'd give less bonus money than they usually do. They should have just doubled them up because they totally deserved it. Munhoz deserved it because he had punches early. Jimmie was throwing bombs and he was landing bombs, and just shout out to Pedro because he's probably got the best chin at bantamweight. He went toe to toe with Frankie for 5 rounds. Went toe-to-toe with Cody and took his best and then knocked him out. And then Jimmie, he was one of the hardest punches as well. So he stood up to them and then he was getting them calf kicks off, and it was crazy to watch. Just the heart from Jimmie continued to push forward, continued to come at him, and it just weren't enough in the end. But Pedro looked fantastic, and he'll be straight back in the mix. But I think Jimmie will as well. It was a great watch, and them calf kicks were some of the nastiest you're going to see.
Yeah, and like the minute left in the first round, he could barely stand, I think he got calf kicked about 50 seconds left in the round, and he just, legs went out from under him. I was like, how does he think he's going to go for the rest of the fight? But he just held on. Got to the point where it looked like he was anticipating being kicked, so he'd lunge forward with his punches and just fall forward. But hey, it was very exciting to watch, and I think both guys' stock went up. I don't think the loss is a bad loss here. They're 1-1. I would love to see a trilogy. Wouldn't make sense right now, but down the line, that would be a very fun fight to redo.
Yeah, and Jimmie will stay in the mix, won't he? He'll beat some other top contender soon, and then Pedro. If Pedro gets a loss against one of the big guys, like the bigger names, and it's on again, isn't it? It can potentially be higher up a card on and maybe a pay-per-view. If you. I feel like the UFC putting on fights with, this is going to be a good one. Put them two in a cage, it's going to be fun. So, yeah, really, and it's interesting with them calf kicks because the commentary stream was trying to figure it out, and I think Bisman was ban them, and it was a funny to listen to them while this was all going on. But what do you do with them? I'm not sure. It seems to be all about heart. You've got the Sean O'Malley who fell over quite easy. Then you've got the Conor McGregor who seemed to kind of eat a few and then eventually just give up and just go for it. And then you've got the Jimmie Riveras who are super tough and actually can take them for 3 rounds. But it seriously compromises people, and it'll be interesting to see in the next year or two as how people actually start defending them and how they actually eradicate it from the game, because eventually someone will cotton on how to stop them and they will die off. But it'll be interesting to see who figures it out first.
That's the thing. Like even checking them, you're still taking so much damage, you know. So it's not really a fix for the problem; just reduces the damage. But yeah, like you said, someone will come up with something, and that person's gonna rise to the top very quick. I think so. We'll see. Opening the card, we had Alex Caceres against Kevin Croom. Dominant victory by Caceres in this one. Kevin Croom really had nothing to offer on the feet, and he couldn't get himself the takedown, so he really did struggle in this fight. What were your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's a great win. Another great win for Alex Caceres. He's put 4 in a row now, and it was just by the end he was looking like he was going to finish. Cream looked absolutely knackered. He'd obviously been relentless in pursuing his game plan, but it just didn't work. It just didn't work on that night. And Caceres is just too crafty. He just had a bit too much for him, and got the win. Another fight that I went, but I thought this might be the fight of the night, but it just didn't turn out to what I thought it would be. But Caceres, another win, 4 in a row. He's racking them up now. He's beaten, Croom looked great in his debut. He got Hooper on that record now, and I think he called for someone in the rankings. So I wouldn't be opposed to seeing that. I think he's earned it. He's had a long career with the UFC, 4 in a row. I think that's what he should be pushing up and aiming higher.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Hall just lost his opponent with Dan Eag not long ago, and he's probably on the fringe rankings, hasn't fought in a little while. Maybe you give him a Ryan Hall, if that's a bit of a tune-up fight for Hall, I guess, because he has been out so long. But for Caceres, it's the rank guy he wants, and if he gets a win there, it's only going up,
Yeah, I think Ryan Hall would be a great fight. I think Ryan Hall's a great fight for anyone at this point. I just want to see him in the octagon. But anyone for Caceres, he's a gamer though. He seems like one of them guys who's just the first name you offer him, he's accepting. So I don't think he's going to be too. He's not going to sit on the sidelines and demand things. I think he's just going to get back in there soon and hopefully keep racking up the wins, because I like watching him. I like his style. It's just this fight it weren't the best, and there was only one winner though, and if that fight was 5 rounds, Caceres would have finished him. He was coming on strong.
That's true. I'll throw it to you to grab any of these prelims you want to touch on before we get to news.
Well, the only one to speak about really is Thiago Moises against Alexander Hernandez, who, it seemed like a pretty clear decision for Thiago, but Alexander Hernandez is not happy with it. He's come out on social media and saying, turn the commentary off, listen in silence, and you'll see I won that fight pretty clearly. 2.5 rounds he thinks he won. So I didn't think he did. I think Moises, clearly beat him, and I was picking Alex going into the fight. So the worry about these type of things is when someone doesn't recognise they've lost, and how can you improve if you just think you've been robbed when the rest of the world thinks you clearly lost, then there's improvements to be made, and he's not going to make them. So that's a worrying sign for someone who's so young and got so much talent to not openly admit that he's been beaten. It's a bit of a worry, red flag.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't catch any of these prelims, so can't really speak on that one, but I did see the controversy with Hernandez after the fight. I know there was a finish. Did you catch the finish from Ronny Lawrence against Vince Caceres?
Well, shout out Ronny Lawrence, because it was the only finish on the card, which is just crazy. I know it was only 9 fights this card, but we're just used to a lot more carnage, aren't we? And he bagged himself an extra 50k, so well done him. Good finish, good win. Extra 50k, and it was just a weird night of fights, and it was Ronny with the finish, but even that was in the 3rd round. There was a lot of cage time on this fight card, and well, I'm almost certain UFC 259 will deliver much more than this card anyway. So it was just one of them nights. Weren't the best. Pedro Munhoz and Jimmie Rivera kind of saved it, and also Ronny. So shout out to him, and on to the next one.
Make sure to subscribe to the LowKick MMA YouTube channel for all the latest news, event previews, and interviews with some of the biggest stars in MMA. Yep, let's go on to some news. First thing I have here is from Tony Ferguson. He is training with boxing coach Freddie Roach ahead of his next fight, who we don't know who it's against. But this makes me think it's going to be against Nate Diaz. Why is he with such a prestigious boxing coach if he's not fighting a boxer, like a MMA fighter who is a boxing specialist? So I hope it's a Diaz fight. I know Chow said on Twitter not long ago, he was like, me and Tony are talking about his next fight. It's the one you all want. And that's the one I want. So hopefully that's what it is. What do you think about the coach, first of all, like him moving there? And also, what do you think about a potential Diaz matchup, or who do you think it is?
I hope it's Diaz. I think that's a really good fight. I think it's a tough fight for Tony, though. I really do. I think, obviously, Diaz is more comfortable at 170. is, in my opinion, he's the better boxer. And I'd say at this stage in his career, he's probably the more durable fighter. You know, after that Gaethje fight, I'm not sure Tony's going to be able to bounce back and look the same in terms of how much damage you can actually take. So it's a good fight. I think it's the fight. You know, it's still a big fight, but neither of these guys are kind of in the title mix. So it's perfect to match them up against each other. So in terms of box, I like the fact that he's training with Freddie Roach. I don't think you're ever too old to learn, you know, some new stuff. I think, you know, obviously his head movement hasn't been great. He's been very hittable throughout his career, and if he can just add just even a few little things that helps him, you know, get back in the win column, I think it's a great move, and it's a smart move, because for someone who's achieved so much and to be so successful, one of the most successful lightweights ever, to be at 37 and say, oh, I need to make a change. And he's still wanting to improve. It's cool. I like to see it.
Yeah, I've got one more piece of news, then I'll throw it to you for what you've got. This one, something small. Jeremy Stephens is moving back up to lightweight to take on Drakkar Klose. Obviously, he was on a 3 or 4 fight skid at featherweight. I can't remember. But yeah, so he's making the change in weight. And the last time he did this was when he came down from lightweight to featherweight after taking 3 losses in a row. What are your thoughts on this move at this point in his career?
Yeah, it's probably needed, isn't it? I don't know what's left for him at featherweight, you know, in terms of he's not going to be a contender, isn't he, anymore? Does he want to become the kind of the whipping boy really for the up and comers, you know? But in fairness to him, he hasn't lost to, you know, anyone who isn't elite level. You know, Calvin Kattar, Yair Rodriguez, Zabit, and Jose, like they're some. That's probably the top 4. You know, besides Max and Volk, that's the best of the rest. So, what I think he could still be competitive at featherweight, and I do think it's his best weight. But after 4 losses, I'm sure he's feeling, and he's 34 years old. He needs to make a change. So I'm not against it. Drakkar Klose is a good fight as well. It's a very winnable fight for him, I think. It'll be interesting to see how he looks.
And that one's going to be on the April 17th card, headlined by Whitaker and Paulo Costa, which leads me into the piece of news I think you have there with Paulo Costa's excuse.
Yeah, it's so apparently the night before he fought Adesanya, he drank a full bottle of wine, and he was hungover on the day, so that's why he lost. Which is when he speaks about the story, it kind of does make sense, but it's also one of the stupidest things. If he actually did do that, it's one of the stupidest things he could possibly do. Why would you drink a full bottle of wine the night before your fight? I know. I can imagine in these high pressure situations, the night before a big fight, you do struggle to sleep. But I'm sure there's other methods. And you know, he shot himself in the foot there, and I don't think people like the excuses. I've seen a lot of people comparing them to Deontay Wilder, and it's you know, the loss was humiliating enough, and then obviously Adesanya's post-fight antics, and now this, it's just all becoming a bit of a shit show for Costa, who he's so talented, but he's a bit of a joke at the minute, and I'm hoping he's able to turn it around, because another bad loss against Whitaker, and you know, people are going to be lining up to take shots at him.
Yeah, I mean, like, even if he, like you said, that's a terrible excuse. If you've done that, then you deserve to lose the fight, right? Like, what are you doing? But hey, I wonder if they because I know they drug test them on the day usually. Does alcohol wouldn't come up and they need to breathalyze them, but they should alcohol give them a breatho test as well to see if they're like drunk when they go into the fight. I'm sure no one is, but hey, at least they could validate his excuse.
Yeah, and it's one of them excuses where it's so dumb that you shouldn't even tell anyone. If you drank a bottle of wine before the night of the fight, I'd just take that to your grave, because it's just a ridiculous thing to do, and it just leaves them open. It's not the excuse to make. Like, I'd rather just say, "Oh, I got beat up by Ciryl Gane. He's one of the best fighters in the world," and say, "Oh, I was drunk or hungover." It's so stupid, and yeah, it's not a good look for Costa, and a lot of things since that fight haven't been a good look for Costa. So hopefully he's able to get his mind right, and you know, because he's got another big fight coming up, and I'm sure he won't be able to sleep the night before he fights Whitaker. So I'll be interested to see if he's pissed again.
Yeah, that will be interesting. Do you have any other news, or wrap it up?
So just a couple of bits. So Masvidal, he told a boxing site, he was at Canelo's fight the other night, and he told a boxing site that he's booked to fight in August or September against Usman. So Very interesting times. I think Usman's or Ali Abdelaziz has come out and said nothing's done. We'll let him know if we're giving him a shot. But he seems to be pretty certain, and that's seems to be the direction we're going in. And if it's August or September, I'd say that gives us a lot of time to film tough series. So I think it's all starting to add up, and I think this is the fight we're going to get.
Yeah, especially because Colby didn't take that Leon fight. I think if Colby took that Leon fight for next week or 2 weeks from now, and if Colby got a one there would be no way you could say Colby doesn't deserve this shot. But because he didn't take that fight, now you don't know when Colby's going to fight next. Even if Leon beats Belal Muhammad, it's like that's not really going to give him a title shot, is it? It should because of what he's put together, but still, it's not going to. So I feel like the only option at this point is Masvidal. And like you said, Ultimate Fighter, if he's saying it's booked, it's probably booked.
Yeah, and I think there's the fact that it's August or September tells me there's a plan to do something in between, because that's a long layoff for Usman and Masvidal as well. So and unfortunately for Leon Edwards, no matter what he does, he's not getting that shot, because if they want to put Usman on tough, Leon's not the guy to do it against, because Usman's not necessarily a star, like a superstar anyway. Is anyone going to tune into Leon against Usman Ultimate Fighter? I'm not sure they will, but they'll definitely tune in if Masvidal's on. So yeah, looks like we're getting there, and I'm sure we'll see this kind of developing over the next coming weeks.
Yeah, you got any other news?
Just finally, we've got Zhang against Namajunas. Apparently done, or pretty much done, for UFC 261, which is great to hear. I think it's the fight to make. I think Rosa is the best of the rest. Besides Zhang, she's the top dog, and it's going to be great to see them actually go at it.
Yeah, I believe this card's meant to happen in Singapore. I've heard Dana White talking about it. I've seen sites reporting on it. Weili Zhang's next fight's going to be in Singapore, which is infuriating for me because it's like 3 hours flight and it's not far like from here, Western Australia, but can't leave because of the COVID. So, but hey, that is pretty cool that the UFC is willing to go to where the market is in this case and put events on abroad.
I think that was the plan, but I think they scrapped it now. I think it will be in Vegas, this one. Ariel Helwani was saying the other day that they've been trying to get it in Singapore, but it looked like they've bailed on that plan. But I'm sure at some point in the next year or two, that's where they'll be taking Zhang. They'll be taking it to China or Singapore or somewhere in that region, because by all accounts, he's a superstar, and MMA's blowing up over there. So I'm sure the UFC will be wanting to tap into that market.
Yeah, and that is a great title fight, and I'm keen to see that one. If you've got no more news, we'll wrap this up, and then we'll later in a couple of days, we'll put out the preview for UFC 259, which is this coming weekend. Is that everything?
Yeah, that's everything. It was a shame we didn't get the best card, but there's another one coming up, so check out our preview when it drops.
Yeah, I'm sure this one will be a lot better. And so thanks for watching. We'll speak to you then.